everybody. Welcome to Dattitude. It is Friday morning, so I'm here with Larry Holder, as I always am. It is episode number 205, and we're going to get started right away. Larry's going to be with us for about 35 minutes this morning. If you want to chat with us, you type in a message, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're watching on Facebook, and even now on Twitter/X/whatever you want to call it is fine with us. Larry Holder, how are you on this Friday morning?
Look, as I predicted, there would be something to talk about Saints-wise, and it might not be exactly what everyone was hoping for. This is something you and me have talked about in the change of Pete Carmichael being let go as offensive coordinator. We knew that was coming, but I'm sure people were looking for bigger fish to fry, and that obviously is not the case.
We are most certainly going to get into the Dennis Allen aspect and staying here. Look, I've been very public about my feelings the past couple of weeks since the season ended and how my feelings have changed, and I get more into it and probably a little bit harsher in my monologue portion of this show, which you can find wherever you find your podcast. We have to finish this first because that's part of the podcast, but if you go search for Dattitude and you see episode number 205, which will appear around noon or a little before that, you can hear my monologue. But here with Larry Holder of The Athletic, and look, again, we'll talk about Dennis Allen in a minute, but I want to get into the question of the moment. And the question of the moment is what you see up there. What are the Saints looking for in hiring our new OC? You know, even throughout your time in covering this team, you didn't go through a whole lot of change. You had a lot of Sean Payton, who, even though Pete Carmichael was the OC from 2009 on, in essence, it was Sean Payton. So it's hard to judge and hard to figure out where this team might go. But just from your time covering the team, do you think it's more of an inside thing with Ronald Curry, or do you think it's more of we're going to go outside and truly and do due diligence and interview candidates from the outside?
I mean, offensively, it was certainly the only time it changed was when Sean Payton was out for the 2012 season, when Pete Carmichael had to take over as OC.
That went well.
Yeah, well, the offense was fine. Defense was not so swell, which why Steve Spagnuolo was one and done. But look, if I'm thinking that Dennis Allen knows his job is on the line, so I think they 100%. Go outside the building. I know Ronald Curry is certainly highly thought of, but I think they need a change of pace from and a fresh voice from outside the building. And I'm like, I haven't necessarily followed it close enough to see who could be their candidates. Right. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts throughout the league right now. I mean, since last we spoke, look, it's Bill Belichick's gone, Mike Vrabel's gone, Pete Carroll, all of this. Like, you're having all of these coaching searches and names are flying everywhere. No one's made hires yet because you really can't because of the way the interview process is going. So this is going to extend a little further than maybe you might want, but still, I think that they have to have a wide open candidate pool, which was different than what they did when they hired Dennis Allen. Even though they talked to people, some of them were still connected to the Saints. You need to go outside the building and get some fresh voices, in my opinion.
Yeah, that wasn't a real search. Let's be honest about it. They did not search for anyone. I think they went through the process of, complying with the Rooney Rule and those sorts of things. But Dennis Allen was getting hired. I mean, there's no question about it. And that's one of the problems I had. Whether Dennis Allen was the best candidate for the job, I mean, sure, you can go back and say, hindsight's 20/20. So I'm not even arguing that Dennis Allen wasn't the best candidate for the job. What I'm saying is I don't think this team did enough due diligence, and that's what worries me about this position. But I agree with you that Dennis Allen's job is on the line, so I do think this is a little bit different. So, Marianne, the answer to your question, new OC yet? The answer is no, and it's not. It's going to be a little while. There are lots of dominoes that need to fall here. And you see the stuff on the bottom of the screen. You see the graphics that I put together. I put a little story up on NOLA.com this morning, a post or whatever you want to call it. Larry, I don't know if you knew this or not, but there have been 157 NFL coaches in league history who have coached at least 70 games. And Mickey Loomis was comparing his current coach to the likes of, Well, let's just put the picture up there. I mean, he was comparing his coach to Bill Belichick, Bill Walsh, Chuck Noll, and Tom Landry. I mean, does he exactly fit in with these guys? I'm going to tell you with the number and where he ranks. Well, I mean, you kind of have a inkling by the graphic that I have there at the bottom. That's just since 1990. But 157 coaches have coached at least 70 games. Where does Dennis Allen rank on that list?
I'm scared to even ask. I don't know. I will say, here's the thing before you give me the answer. In Robert Kraft's going away Bill Belichick press conference, he certainly said that it wasn't necessarily a popular move when he hired Belichick because Belichick wasn't Belichick yet. And so, look, you could say so-and-so isn't LeBron James yet, and then he becomes, you could, yeah. That was spin control, but no. All right. I'm intrigued, Jim. Where do we go from here?
Okay. So he's comparing, like we said, with the likes of Bill Belichick, Bill Walsh, Chuck Noll, Tom Landry. If you go by rankings and winning percentage, he really should be compared with the likes of Dan Henning, Romeo Crennel, Marion Campbell, Joe Bugle, and David Shula, because Dennis Allen on the list of 157 in winning percentage ranks 150th. So I don't give a damn whether he is, what could happen in the future. And this is with a 9-8 season. He just had a winning season. He still ranks 150th among those coaches. So he ranked worse than that before the season started. That gave him a boost. You can see on the screen here, since 1990, of coaches that have coached at least 70 games, he is fourth worst ever. Well, ever. Fourth worst in the last 34 years. I mean, that's saying something to me.
Well, it's certainly saying something. And but it goes back to the way that the organization operates, the way that Mickey Loomis operates. He's more methodical and deliberate in his approach rather than impulsive. And yet sometimes impulsive needs to happen. And we could argue back and forth whether Dennis deserves to be around.
Oh, I don't think
we know the Saints thinking. Like, it doesn't matter what we think. There's no question. There's a reason why Mickey came out and defended Allen and threw all these names out. Like, they have a different thought process than other people. And here's the difference. It's we're used to success now with the Saints. We're not used to them struggling. And say if Sean Payton hadn't gotten to where he got in 2009, I mean, you have to wonder, would that have been it for Sean Payton? But it seems like whenever he had his back maybe against the wall, perception-wise, and maybe Peyton didn't even really have his back against the wall perception-wise, because they went – how many years did they go with Hazlitt? 6? So Sean Payton, after going to an NFC Championship game, then they had 2 mediocre years, and that would have been year 4. Would they have gone another year? So, like, that's just their approach. And, like, whenever Sean's back was against the wall, they rebounded. Like, once you go 8-8, Super Bowl win. 3 years of 7-9, and then all of a sudden 5 years. So that, in their eyes, oh, well, we're improving. The record's better. So, like, I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's what they're thinking.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And I've said this before. You talk about Jim Haslett. I mean, I think if Katrina doesn't happen, which in turn forced the 3-13 season, and I think I'm not blaming Jim Haslett for the 3-13 season. I think the greatest coach on the planet would have gone 4-12, 5-11, whatever it was, having to play the whole season on the road. I don't blame Jim Haslett for that. But Jim Haslett his expiration date had probably already reached for most teams before the 2005 season. So in the grand scheme of things, if Katrina doesn't happen, New Orleans doesn't get Sean Payton. I'm not saying the city's lucky by any means, because I don't want that to come off the wrong way. But I'm just telling you what would have happened, what doesn't happen. So Sean Payton and Drew Brees, I don't think ever happened had Katrina not happened. But that's what it took. And you talk about, I think there would have been a lot of teams who, after those 3 7-9 seasons, would have probably made a move. Even I was thinking they should have made a move. It ended up being the right thing. And maybe we'll all sit here. Maybe the fans will sit here with egg on their face. Maybe I'll have egg on my face when all is said and done. But I doubt it.
Well, they haven't really given you enough benefit of the doubt to not doubt them in this sense. And it's something that we all know this is make or break now. I mean, this is
Right.
it. Like when you make these changes, the next person to go is the head coach. I mean, like I said, going into that 2017 season, Sean Payton had to get rid of all of his buddies,
Right.
and he was next. And it wasn't going to be his call at that time because the two previous off seasons, it was going to be his call as he was trying to explore other options, and the Saints were open to letting him do that and maybe making a deal and that sort of thing. But obviously, that didn't come to fruition. But um, this is the way of the order. I mean, and you're seeing it across the league, even with coaches who even Matt Eberflus had to get rid of a bunch of coaches, and he had a better season. Wasn't a winning season, but they improved to what I think they were
I think they
seven
finished
and
7-10.
7-10.
Yeah.
So they improved along the way, but they still had to make changes. But if it falls back, the next piece is the head coach. So that's certainly something that we all know that's the case going forward.
Well, and we look at the coaches. Here are some of the teams you see at the bottom of the screen who are in the process of hiring coaches or doing interviews. And these odds come from Bet Online. Bill Belichick, the favorite to be the Atlanta Falcons' next coach, which we'll get into in a minute. But I find you find some of these names interesting. Carolina, the favorite there is Kellen Moore. I think he's going to be a good coach going forward. We don't know. Dan Quinn, a retread. I don't understand why the Seahawks would want to do that. That's just interesting. Why would you want to? Especially
that's familiarity. That is,
that
and
makes
then
no sense
look,
to me whatsoever.
I mean, his name was. If the Cowboys season didn't end the way it was, we probably wouldn't be saying that about Dan Quinn. But I mean, I think that's it's almost like Dennis Allen. Like he coached his way back into consideration. Like it took some
Right.
years. Dennis Allen was the same way. He coached his way back into consideration.
Right. Yeah. No, I hear you. All right. Look, let's talk about the Bill Belichick aspect of Atlanta if that happens. What do you think? Obviously, they would be in the looking for a quarterback there. We've heard the names Russell Wilson. We've heard potentially a trade for Justin Fields. I mean, Bill Belichick's not going to go to Atlanta with the current quarterback situation. They would have to address that, don't you think?
No coach will. I mean, the owner came out and said it. Like that ship is sailed for Desmond Ritter and Taylor Heineke and whoever it is. It's going to be somebody different. And look, Bill's not going to go somewhere where he has the same sort of situation that he's leaving in New England. I mean, that's the same thing he'd be walking into in Atlanta. I'll be honest. It goes to show you where their mindset is. That Ryan Nielsen is interviewing for the DC job with Jacksonville. So technically he's still employed by Atlanta, even though Arthur Smith got fired, and they haven't gotten rid of Nielsen, but they're allowing him to test his options somewhere else, which would signify to me Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is a defensive guy. Well, yeah, Ryan Nielsen. I can't see him coming back.
Right.
But yeah, exactly. But still, it kind of shows you that that's the thinking. And I know they've had like a second interview. I know they've and Bill is. I think in our reporting that we had even this morning that he's sat down and had dinner with Arthur Blank and all this. So they're trying to hash this thing out. And, but yeah, he's going in certainly new quarterback, doing whatever you can to get somebody. And it's probably a sense that maybe it's be more the veteran path just because Bill's not getting any younger. Arthur Blank's not getting any younger. So it would probably be more of the veteran path. And look, Justin Fields makes sense to me. Justin Fields makes more sense to me than Russell Wilson makes sense.
Are you convinced that the Bears are going to move on from Justin Fields?
I'm not totally convinced, but they're in a position that they can, and it won't be that big of a deal. I know Bears fans are thinking maybe this, but look, if you pass on one of these quarterbacks,
right,
and Fields flames out, and then two of the three guys you could be talking about. I mean, you're talking Caleb Williams, but of course Drake May's up there. Jaden Daniels to a lesser degree. Jaden Daniels could be a top 10 pick.
I just think there's so much more they could do with that first-round pick. I think that, you just committed to Justin Fields. It hasn't been that long. I mean, to give up on this guy and to think he really hasn't had any offensive weapons in his defense. I can't believe I'm defending him because I've really kind of bashed him a little bit throughout the years. But what I saw the last half of this year has kind of changed my mind a little bit. I think maybe he can be the quarterback that they were looking for if he had some weapons, because DJ Moore obviously made a big difference for him. And going forward, if you give this guy some real weapons, they had a better running game behind him. It wasn't great, but give him an offensive line and give him like 2 more wide receivers. I think this team could be okay. And I think Fields can be a good quarterback.
Yeah, I think Justin Fields can be good, which is why I think Atlanta will try to go get him. Like, right. They can make an offer that could make it worth Chicago's while to do that. And then they say, well, we can go get our own quarterback. And then they have their own pick. Say that's the thing. Like, if they stick with their, their own pick or trade it away, could they get a couple of weapons? Sure. But could they get a quarterback that, could be better in their eyes than Justin Fields, and also get a weapon like they won't get Marvin Harrison Jr., but they could get like maybe Malik Neighbors or like someone like Brian Thomas. Like I'm naming those are legitimate.
Maybe.
Yeah, like I'm saying, there's some depth at wide receiver in this draft.
I think there's a lot of depth at wide receiver in this draft.
A lot of good first round talent. So this is something that they can mix and match. And say if they do trade Justin Fields, they're getting more compensation to add to that, and on top of them having the number 1 pick, and on top of them having their own pick. So like you got to think of it in that sense. It's it could be a real boom for Chicago, but also you don't want to see Fields go to say Atlanta and then be great, and then it's the risk reward. I mean, they took Mitch Trubisky, that blew up in their face. It could have had Patrick Mahomes.
See, this whole thing is why it frustrates me even more watching the Saints team and not making change. Because before, when I was talking about, maybe the Saints would just stay status quo and just kind of bite the bullet next year because they're going to stink. Well, I mean, when we've gone through the whole, I'm not going to go through the whole, he's obviously lost the locker room spiel again. I think we all know that. I think we've all heard that before. But so maybe on the other hand, why wouldn't you make a change now with all the things that you talk? I think this is going to be the most talented draft that we've seen in quite a while. I thought last year's was good, but I think this year's draft is going to be maybe one of the best in the last 10 or 12 years.
I think it's beneficial also, say, for the Saints, because we know they've got some areas to address, and
for sure.
Your primetime areas like tackle, like defensive, edge rusher, edge rusher. Like they have pieces that will be good and strong within this draft. And, we could be realistic. They're not going to go quarterback in the first round. I wouldn't think.
Nor should they.
To me, it drops off after Daniels, and Daniels could go.
Look,
Daniels could get drafted by the Falcons. Let's be
it's
honest.
Possible. I don't think he'll be there that long, but it's possible. But I will say this: I don't care if one of those 3 guys drops or not. If the Saints don't take an offensive tackle with their first round pick, everyone in the GD room should be fired. I mean, that is like by far, and I said this last year, and no one listened and no one cares, and I get it, no one cares what I say. But I said it last year, and it's even twice as much so this year. Their number 1 need last year was an offensive lineman, an offensive tackle to be more specific. Their number 1 need by far, it's not even argue. At least last year you could argue they needed an interior lineman. They went out and got Brian Bresee, whatever, and then drafted Isaiah Foskey with the 2nd-round pick, which was absurd. But there is no other need more pressing than offensive tackle, period, for this team. Again, they're complete morons if they don't take an offensive tackle with their first pick.
And Dennis is coaching for his job. He's not coaching 100%. For 3 years from now. So they're pinned with Derek Carr, and they have to make it work with what they have, and knowing the way that Mickey's A, speaking, and B, we know how this organization rolls. Like they're still in win now mode, because look, they go into next year, they could still be considered the favorite to win the division, even how Tampa's doing right now. I mean, so it's
they might be.
I get their logic, but it's a logic where, I mean, you feel like there's only a ceiling, and the ceiling is not being one of the top teams in the NFL. But look, here's the thing. What's making this probably worse is that Tampa edged in the playoffs, won a division. They beat up Philadelphia. What if they go upset Detroit? Like the Saints probably
we're going to get into that in a minute.
The Saints probably see, oh my gosh, we're just as good or better than them. We have an even better opportunity next year with the piece that we have.
We'll see. All right. Speaking
Fool's
of
gold, maybe, probably.
Larry doesn't have as much time with us as he usually does this morning, so we need to.
I'm on the clock actually today, so
okay. Well,
for my own job.
All right. Well, we have to move on and talk about the NFL playoffs, which is what I want to do anyway. Last week, Larry and I were together on 5 of the 6 picks. The one pick that we weren't together on, Larry was right. I was wrong, but it's nothing to really brag about because we didn't really do all that great. We were mediocre last week.
I was 3-3 with my picks.
Okay. Well, we're going to change that this week. We're going to be good. Last week, I didn't love my picks. This week, I actually do. I really feel confident about my picks. We'll see how that works out, and here we go. Let's start with the AFC. Look, I asked this question, and you think about it, and you think about C.J. Stroud, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. Is this the best divisional round full of quarterbacks that we've ever seen? And I know ever is a long time, but when you talk about a group of 4 quarterbacks in all different spectrums, you got young, you got established, you got a potential GOAT in there. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff going on here.
Well, I wish you would have told me. I would have done the research to see. The only person maybe you're missing out of this group, and it's just because like you can't have that many. But say
right.
Like you're missing like Joe Burrow and you're missing like Justin Herbert. But I mean, who do you replace? I mean, C.J. Stroud has been incredible.
Absolutely.
Lamar Jackson's going to win the MVP, and then you've got Mahomes and Josh Allen. It's going to make for a super intriguing. Like these matchups are more intriguing overall than the NFC, even though I do like some of the NFC playoff storylines, but these matchups to me are super intriguing. I'm pumped to watch them.
So am I. And I tell you, as everyone's talking about Mahomes versus Allen, and obviously we've seen that before, but I am so interested to see how C.J. Stroud does going on the road in a cold environment. You know, people are talking about, oh, it's cold, it's a dome team, blah, blah, blah. C.J. Stroud was playing at Ohio State 2 years ago. I mean, so it's not like he hasn't played in the cold. It's not like it's something new. So,
wave to my wife in the background if you're watching live. She's getting packages.
Anything from me?
she's ignoring. But yeah, Cole. No, that doesn't matter. C.J. Stroud has played, in Michigan, like road games, like in Wisconsin.
I'm sure it was 18 degrees when he played there.
But it's cold. Give me a break.
Yeah, it's not like it's warm in the big house and at the end of November.
Yeah, it's not a fact. That won't be a factor.
All right, let's get in our predictions, and we see the AFC odds on the screen. Baltimore, the overwhelming favorite at basically even money to win the AFC. It's got to start with a game this week where they are highly favored, 9.5-point favorites. We've all heard the talk about Lamar Jackson's record in the playoffs and how he's just been bad. I mean, there's no other way to put it. He's been bad in the playoffs. Is that going to change this week? 9.5-point favorites. Who do you like? Ravens and Texans open it all off 3:30 tomorrow.
On The Athletic, my picks are live. I lone wolfed this game. Lone wolf. I'm going upset. Texans. I love C.J. Stroud. I think he has nothing to lose. I think the Texans have nothing to lose. And the pressure's all on the Ravens. Top seed. Haven't done well with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. Let's roll the dice. I'm taking Texans straight up.
Bad news, my friend.
Of course.
I don't have the chutzpah, whatever you want to call it, to actually pick the Texans outright. But I said it and wrote it in my column. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if Houston won this game. I get all the trends, and I don't usually buck trends like dome teams going play in cold weather, and they're out there. I mean, the numbers aren't good at all. But I really think that C.J. Stroud, I can't ignore it anymore. You just can't. The way he's playing right now and the fact that Lamar Jackson has been awful in the playoffs, there's more to this. And as Ronald says, MVP versus the Rookie of the Year. And It's going to be fun. By the way, it's snowing in Baltimore. Yeah, but it won't be snowing when they play the game. I really don't think that weather's going to be that big of a factor, actually. It's going to be cold, and people keep talking about wind, but from what I've seen, the wind's going to be more like 10 miles an hour. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, and there's going to be no precipitation. So I actually don't think weather's going to be that big of a factor, besides it's just going to be cold. And again, C.J. Stroud used to it. I'm definitely taking the Texans in the 9.5. I think they play well, and I can't go as far as Larry to predict the outright upset. But if we come back here next week and talk about championship games and we're talking about Texans versus Chiefs or Bills, it wouldn't surprise me in the least. It really wouldn't. All right, let's talk about that one. Obviously, that is the marquee matchup of the weekend. Sunday, 5:30 on ESPN, at least 5:30 Central Time. Chiefs are a 2.5-point favorite. Mahomes' first ever true road playoff game. What do you got?
Well, look, Mahomes has not been Mahomes all year. And that's why they're basically in a situation they're in. They're not a bye week. They're having to play a road game in divisional round. But I'm going with Mahomes. I'm going with the Chiefs. I feel like the Bills, they play well, but they could be had. And until Josh Allen can knock off the Chiefs in the playoffs, give me the GOAT among these this quartet of quarterbacks. And the elements won't affect the Chiefs. So I'm going Chiefs in the upset. I'm picking 2 upsets in the AFC.
Josh Allen, 3-1 against the Chiefs in the regular season, 0-2 in the playoffs. But he would have won if blah, blah, blah. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. He didn't win. And I'm so sick of hearing Josh Allen is one of the best top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. He goes through spurts where he just disappears, throws it to the other team. I don't understand why everyone thinks he's as great as he is. He's fun to watch because you don't know what the hell he's going to do.
You're going to say he's not a top 5 quarterback? Come on.
I really don't think he is. I got to be honest.
Who's your top 5? New debate.
We'll talk about that. Let me go do some research. I can tell you this. I'd rather have Joe. Are we talking about long term, or are we just talking about like I got one game right now?
What's the difference?
There's a big difference. If I'm going forward, I'd rather have C.J. Stroud than Josh Allen.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, he's a rookie, sure.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, Josh Allen's only been in the league for, 5 years? It's not like it's that far
2018.
All right, forget all that. I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, okay? I'm just not. Until he's gone, until he proves that I'm not supposed to bet on him, I don't care. It's exactly what you said. So bad news for you again, my friend. We're on the same side. I'm taking Kansas City in the points. Actually, I think Kansas is going to win straight up here as well. I think plus 124 is a great value. And I hope I'm wrong because Buffalo is the only future I have left that's still alive. I have a nice chunk on the Buffalo Bills. I hope I'm wrong. I hope my ticket is still alive when we come here and talk next Friday. But Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen in the playoffs? Taking Patrick Mahomes. I don't see how you cannot. So, talking about potential GOAT against who knows.
I'm trying to think, like, the only person, like, quarterback who's beating him, like, Joe Burrow, like, I can't even – and Tom Brady, like, that's all of the people.
Joe Burrow's hurt, but I would take a healthy Joe Burrow right now over Josh Allen. I would take Patrick Mahomes over Josh Allen. I'd have to think about it. Lamar Jackson stinks in the playoffs, but I'd probably take Brock Purdy over Josh Allen. How far do we want to go with this thing? That's just 3 right there that are in the playoffs right now.
Well, we're talking top 5. He could be 5th. Why can't he be 5th?
We'll talk about it next week. I'm gonna give you my list next week. I want to think about it. All right, we're moving on to the NFC. We got about 4 or 5 minutes left. Look, I think I'd be shocked if you're gonna pick. You're not gonna be a lone wolf picking the Packers here. But do you think the Packers will keep it close Saturday night, 7:15 on Fox? The Packers, and it's kind of been edging. It's been a steady line, but it started out at 10, quickly jumped to 9.5, where it is now. The Packers 9.5-point underdogs at San Francisco.
I mean, I'm going San Francisco. Do I think Green Bay's playing better? For sure. I mean, they were Jordan Love, and we've talked about it a lot actually on the pod, that since half the midseason, he's been one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. And the Packers are lucky that they got him. I mean, because he's going to be their future, and that's cool to see for them. But I think San Francisco, all the pieces, they're after getting shell shocked by the Ravens. I think they're all coming together now. That there's a reason why when you look at the Super Bowl odds, why even though they lost to the Ravens, that they're still the favorite, and I believe that to be true as well. So look, I'm going 49ers here.
Here's a little nugget for you. You know that list of 157 coaches that have coached at least 70 games in the history of the NFL? Matt LaFleur is on that list. Where do you think he ranks?
Probably pretty high.
Number 9. Is the 9th highest winning percentage of coaches that have coached at least 70 games, just ahead of Paul Brown. So that's saying something. He's 56-27, Matt LaFleur, and that I've said it all year long. I thought once that he got out from under this Aaron Rodgers cartoon joke, who just a mess. I think that Matt LaFleur is going to be with the Green Bay Packers for a long time. I think Jordan Love is going to be a really solid quarterback, but not this week. I think the 49ers win and they cover. So are you saying they win by more than 9?
I'll say they cover. Yeah.
So we're both saying they cover. We're 3 for 3 together. That is, I don't know.
Well,
man.
betting terms, I mean, look, I took the Texans straight up. That's bold. Bold, baby.
I'm a sports betting writer. So we're together. And look, again, I don't. You are bold. You're bolder than I. But again, I don't think you're way off base there. See the NFC odds, by the way. San Francisco is almost a 2-1 favorite to win the NFC, which tells me, and I haven't heard a single person, not a single person, think that anyone other than San Francisco is going to win the NFC. And whenever you hear that, whenever you see that logo that's all the way across the screen and everyone's picking the same thing, never happens. And if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be the Detroit Lions. They play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday, 2 p.m. We got one last shot at descent. What do you have here?
I am going Lions, but I won't pick them to cover. I think Tampa somehow keeps this close. I could be wrong. Lions might all of a sudden scorch them. Baker Mayfield might, fall back into the ways of where he struggles against good teams. But I think it's there's going to be a nervy factor, but I do think that Detroit will win but not cover.
Okay, well, we finally have our first descent. I actually think this is going to be the most lopsided game of the entire weekend.
You could be right. I
think the Lions blow the Bucs out of the building. I don't understand why anyone thinks Tampa Bay is any good whatsoever. I think that last week can be thrown out of the window. I'm really upset with myself that I didn't see through the Eagles just quitting, because that's what they did. Jalen Hurts was on. All those guys, they couldn't wait for that to be over with. That game to be over with.
That's amazing for the talent on that team.
What a mess! It's just a mess. I mean, and then the week before that, they beat the Panthers in a game they had to win. Panthers scored 2 touchdowns that got called back. Panthers should have won that game. Saints would have been in the playoffs, and you know what? They'd be the ones going to Detroit this week, because they would have beat that Philadelphia team as well in the Dome. I think Tampa Bay, and then they got shellacked the week before that by the Saints. I just don't think they're any good. I don't think they can the pass defense, which has been terrible. They got a decent pass rush. I just don't think they're going to be able to get to Jared Goff, because the Detroit offensive line is that good. And although the Tampa Bay rushing defense is pretty good, I do think that David Montgomery will supersede that and be able to get past it, along with Jahmyr Gibbs, to give him a little lightning and thunder. I think Detroit wins this game by 20. I really do. And I don't think
you could be right. I probably, in hindsight, look, I made my pick, whatever. In hindsight, I mean, that you could be right. Like, I totally get what you're saying. And but weird things happen in the playoffs.
Yeah, they do.
And
you're right.
That's, but yeah, look, I think Detroit wins. But like I said,
I will say
it could be a blowout. But hey,
if it is,
I'm not putting money on any of this. So hey, whatever.
No, well, I did. I already put my money down. I will say this: if it is Detroit and San Francisco in the NFC Championship game, I think that game could be a whole lot of fun. I would be looking forward to that for sure.
Look, I think regardless, I think in the AFC, I think any of those games will be fun, whoever wins. But yeah, I think you want San Francisco, Detroit. That would be huge storylines there. And I'm sure TV would rather that too. And TV probably wants no part of the Texans getting in. So I get that too.
All right, well, unless something happens with the Saints, I think next week we will probably be focusing mostly on the conference championships and our thoughts, and maybe talk about if there are any head coaching hirings. There will be some NFL news this week, I promise you. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, and maybe there will be Saints news. If the Saints hire an offensive coordinator, we will be talking about that next Friday, but we'll have to wait and see. I know this. barring something weird happening, some going on, Larry Holder will be with me next week on the Dattitude
I will
Podcast.
be. But like I'm willing to bet this isn't going to be the boldest bet ever. But by the time we talk next week, Jim Harbaugh will be the Chargers coach. That's
really
that's where I'm going with that one. So
okay,
you'll have at least one vacancy filled by the time we talk next week. Probably more, but at least one.
Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers. I don't know why I think he's staying in Michigan unless he just wants to, he knows he's going to be in a whole.
He already won there. He can move on.
Yeah.
Good times. He doesn't have to deal with recruiting anymore. He can go spy on whoever he wants, I guess, except you can get caught with that too.
I can go to the Chargers. I can hate him there as much as I hate him now. All right, Larry Holder, we'll see you next week.
You got it.
Reminder for everyone out there, you can go search for Dattitude. I will add my monologue to this podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, just search Dattitude. We will see you next Friday, Larry and I, in the same seats, talking about the NFC and AFC championship games. Everyone have a great football watching weekend. Don't eat too much king cake and stay warm. Talk to you next week.